I'd like to welcome everybody to the April 23rd meeting of the New Bern Board of Aldermen. At this time tonight, the prayer will be given by Alderwoman Harris.
Mayor, tonight I would like to have a good friend, Carol Williams, do the prayer tonight.
Let us pray. Our wise and everlasting Father, we thank you, Father God, for allowing us to assemble here this afternoon, Lord Jesus. We ask you, Father, that you temper our minds and our hearts, Father God, and let the decisions be decisions that will be for the betterment of our city, Lord God. We ask you, Lord Jesus, to continue to strengthen our mayor, our alderpersons, and everyone in this room under the voice that is speaking right now to you, Lord Jesus. We pray, Father God, that you will continue to give us a beautiful and loving and close-knit city, Lord God. And Lord, when we're finished praying and we can't pray anymore, we count these things all done. In your Son's name, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Bingle. Here. Alderwoman Harris.
Present.
Alderman Astor.
Here.
Mayor Outlaw.
Here.
Alderman Kinsey.
Here.
Alderman Best.
Present.
Alderman Odom.
Here.
Okay. Now, would anybody has the agenda okay?
Yes, no, Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Outlaw, I would like to move that we add after the consent agenda, so making it item number
6A.
after 6A, a discussion regarding recycling.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Anybody else have any adjustments or changes to the agenda at this time? Okay, at this time, let's go to the consent agenda, items 3 through 6.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, the same. We'll now go to item number 6A, the recycling. Alderman Bingle.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Of course, the community learned yesterday, but I believe the vote was taken a week ago by the Craven County Board of Commissioners to eliminate the recycling curbside pickup service that they have been provided that was charged on people's tax bill in the amount of $36. I received calls. Many of my friends who are in the audience this evening emailed me, posted on Facebook, whatever, trying to find out. First, I was a little confused. I understand it a little bit better now. Thank you for picking my brain a little bit because I was unsure. Anyway, I'd like for us to maybe have the city manager explain to us what the process is for recycling currently and what we could do as a city, because so many people are upset and concerned about the future of recycling in our community.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Alderwoman Bingle. With regards to recycling, as you kind of stated, the county has been running the program for some time now, where on each person's tax bill, they receive a fee in the amount of $36 per year, which equates to $3 per month, for the recycling curbside service. What I understand is the recycling market has kind of dried up somewhat with very limited amount of those recycling products where it's a revenue generating opportunity for those who recycle. There are several different options. I think, obviously, we contract for our solid waste services with Waste Industries, and have done so for quite some time, and have contracted basically for forever that I know of, ever since I've been here, for our solid waste services. There are several options. One, do nothing. The do-nothing approach will still equate to expenses incurred on the city, because anything that was going into the recycle container is now going to go into, most likely, the 65-gallon container that we have where people throw their typical household refuse. We're estimating probably somewhere from $75,000 to $100,000 of additional cost to the city, and we have about 12,500 customers. So if you do that math, that roughly comes out to be anywhere from about somewhere around 50 cents per customer that would need to be increased on the solid waste fee to cover that as an expense. There are several other options that were kind of thrown out to the county from Waste Industries as options for the municipalities if they so choose that they wanted to continue that service. One of those was continue it as is with a weekly service. The quote that they gave the county was $6 per month, which is twice what it was. So that would equate to about a $900,000 difference for the cost. And in doing so, if you take the $3 out of that, that's about a $450,000 difference from where it was. The $900,000, if we were to take upon that entirely, that's going to equate to an increase somewhere around $6 to the rate, which we're at $14.75 now. It would need to go to about $20.84, $20.75, depending on how everything flushed out with customers and so forth and so on. There was also something that was thrown out about monthly service with a 95-gallon cart, basically picked up once per month with a large cart similar in nature and a little bit bigger than what our residential cart is now. Same 12,500 customers, that was kind of somewhere around $4.50 maybe is what it would potentially be quoted at. $675,000 expense to the city, that would equate to about a $4.57 raise in the solid waste fee, which would go to $19.32 as a whole. My recommendation, I think, to the board would be that we develop a bid and send that out to bid. Because of our density, we may potentially have some interest because we're so much smaller than servicing an entire county of 100,000 residences. We have a little over 30,000 citizens that live here in New Bern. Due to the density of our city, we could potentially see a reduction in those prices and possibly some interest from other parties. So my recommendation would be is to put it out to bid, see what those bid numbers come in at, and then the board can weigh their options about whether they wish to go with doing nothing, which is still going to cost us $100,000 per year, or to potentially look at the options of a 95-gallon container, which we could, with monthly service, which could be included in the bid, or the 17-gallon tote, which could be included in the bid. And then one other option would be is if we are legally able to, and I'd want to verify with Scott and the state to verify that we could do this, is send out potentially a municipal bid of Craven County cities to where we could partner with Havelock and Riverbend and Trent Woods and the city and maybe Bridgeton and try to pick up all of the municipalities of Craven County due to our densities and potentially put a bid package together to see if there would be a hauler that would be interested in doing that. So that's kind of my recommendations now, because right now we're in a situation to where the bid technically was with Craven County, the contract was with Craven County, and I think it would behoove our interest to probably send out a bid and see what kind of interest we get and what kind of prices we get in doing so. The unfortunate thing is that this decision has been thrust upon us with a termination date of June 28th, which is right around the corner. We're April the 23rd now, so we're 2 months away from the end of this service. Typically, a bid of this magnitude, which would probably be a multi-year contract, probably 5 years is what we typically do with our solid waste contract. I would say you would probably give a 30-day bid on something like this, especially if you're going to take the time to get other municipalities and them look at the routes and get a very adequate quote. So that's my recommendation, is that we look at putting a bid proposal together. It probably would not be relatively difficult for us to put something like that together because they happen all over the state. We could copy someone else's, utilize it, send it out for bid, and I think we could get those quotes back relatively quickly, say in about 3 weeks if we really pushed them. Probably 30 days would be optimal. And then end of May, we would have a pretty good idea about where we would stand if we were to, hoe the row ourselves, or if we were to join with other municipalities in Craven County to potentially help drive that price down. So that would be my recommendation.
Small question, Mark. Hasn't Waste Industries bought everybody else out, so they're the only player in the game? Is that true?
I don't know about their contractual arrangements. We would only know that whenever people didn't show up to the bid. I'm sure that there's probably a non-compete clause that was developed with GDS or Republic Services, being they bought out their share. I'm not sure if it applied to recycling. I would imagine it probably did, but I would be merely speculating.
Okay, did you have something on Woman Harris?
My comment would basically just be, I think it's really important as a board that we kind of figure out how to have better communication with the county, because we far too often have to put out flames, and we were not made aware of this. And not only is the county affected, we are also affected by this decision, and the citizens are very frustrated, they're upset. And they did a bad job by putting it out on Earth Day. I mean, I think that was pretty bad, and I just think that we really need to do better with communication. I mean, I don't know, at this point, we've requested, I know Jeff, and did you guys have that meeting yet with the commissioners?
Yeah.
So, I mean, even like with the SROs, we as a city put it on our city manager to figure out a solution for things that we need to partner with when it comes to the commissioners of Craven County. So I just think, this is another situation where we're going to have to pick up the ball and figure it out, because we need to do that. So that's basically my comment.
And just regards to that, the communication part, I just want to be very clear that I was only notified several days before the board was planning, or the Board of Commissioners were planning to potentially investigate the termination of that contract.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Mr. Stevens, do you or staff, or is there somebody from Waste Industries I think was planning on coming tonight? I'd like to know a rough percentage of the amount of items that's in the recycling bin. What percentage of that item actually gets recycled? Do we have any idea about that?
I don't know the specific percentage. I think aluminum, Norma with Waste Industries is here. If you would like her to come up and ask a few
Come on
questions.
up, make some comments.
Yeah, we'd like.
We're in this together here. But
Good evening. I'm Norma Yanez with Waste Industries. You have to understand the recycle market these days is very tumultuous. We're very fortunate here in eastern North Carolina that we still have Sunoco and Jacksonville. The materials that's in the county program, of course, is paper, glass, plastic bottles, aluminum cans, metal cans, and cut-up cardboard. Right now, I attended a state meeting. The state is having meetings all over the place. They were in Beaufort probably 6 weeks ago, along with Sunoco, talking to all the towns and the counties to let them know what was going on with the markets. And they'll tell you really the value of the things that for sure are going through and getting recycled are aluminum cans, the metal cans, cardboard, some of the paper, and some of the plastic. Glass, I attended the Carolina Recycle Association conference a month ago. Glass is hit and miss. You have to remember when you put it in your bin, it gets dumped in the truck, it gets dumped on a concrete floor, then it gets pushed up again in another truck, dumped on another concrete floor. A lot of that does run through and run out the back door to the landfill. They are doing tests on trying to grind the glass to use it for covers like at landfills and on roads. Some of that is going on. North Carolina does have one glass recycler, Reflective Recycling in Wilson, that's taken glass bottles, but he can only take so much and they need to be more pristine than broken up. So glass is probably the biggest item that doesn't get recycled. But I can tell you the gentleman from Sunoco, they're one of the largest recyclers in the United States. They have the position where they can take a lot of the cardboard and the paper and reuse it because they manufacture Gaylord containers and other kinds of cardboard boxes. So they do recycle a lot of it, but it gets to a point where you can only warehouse so much of it, and then it has to go out the back door as well. That's the best answer. We're the hauler. We do not own the processor, but that's as far as my knowledge, what the state is saying, what the processor's saying. When you get to the middle of the state, a lot of those processors aren't taking any glass at all. I go towards Charlotte, they're not taking any glass. We are lucky in the fact that Sunoco still takes it. And it's hard to pull it out. Some programs are trying to pull it out, but once you've got those people used to putting those bottles in those recycle bins, it's really, really hard to keep it out of them. And then when you get to the facility to dump it, you have no idea who put it in there. And then, of course, you've got the ABC law in North Carolina, where you have if you sell alcoholic beverages, you have to prove that you're recycling your bottles, so they still have to recycle their bottles. It's quite a quandary sometimes trying to figure out what in the world to do with it all. So,
Okay, thank you. My comment would be, I appreciate the city manager making that recommendation before we get to that point, because what I don't want us to happen is we talk about over and over again about partnering with the county. Let's consolidate 911. Let's talk about SROs, and then we come to a situation like this, and it's like, well, the county's not going to do it, so now the city's going to start doing it. Well, what happens if we enter a contract and then the county decides they get enough backlash and they have to go back and actually do it again? So now we're at another quandary where we're trying to figure out who's going to pay what, make sure our citizens aren't getting double taxed. My recommendation would be for those in the public that have a vested interest in this to contact your county representative, your county commissioner. They're the ones that made this decision, and there's been times when they've pushed stuff on us. I'm just being a little fair here. I'm going to push some things on them. You need to contact your county commissioner. They need to hear your voice. They made a decision, right or wrong, they made a decision. If you disagree, you need to let them know. And I would highly encourage you to do that in the very near future, because they have a time frame and they need to make some decisions as well. My preference would be is that the county rethink this, think about the citizens that they were voted in by to represent, and do what those citizens feel. I did a very informal survey. The problem with that sort of thing is you don't know who's within the city limits, who's within the county, but it's about 85% of people said they were willing to pay more to have the service. So those 85% of people and everybody else that voted yes needs to make sure you contact your county commissioner. You can go to the Craven County website and get their contact information, but I'd highly encourage you to do that as soon as possible when you leave here tonight. Some of you may leave right now because this is why you came, so when you get home you can do it then. So thank you.
Alderman Best.
I concur with what Alderman Odom has just stated, because I do know that this program, for the last probably 25 years, I do know for a fact that Craven County was one controlling this program and charging the customers $36 to their tax bill. So, for this to be dumped on us at such a time factor here, talking about June, the end of June, if we do as a board decide to go with this, I really like the suggestion that city manager stated, that we check with the other surrounding cities here to see if we can all partner together so that this expense won't be such a great expense on the customers. So that's my play on this if we do decide to go with this. But I just,
Yes,
we
sir.
had a meeting with the county 2-3 weeks ago, and this was not even mentioned to, I think this should have been mentioned to us.
Okay, Alderman Astor.
Mr. Stevens, do you know, are all the municipalities in Craven County participating in the recyclable?
All the municipalities that I know of participate with the county's program, with the exception of Bridgeton. I believe Bridgeton has their own program.
Does the Bridgeton residents charge the $36
They
a
do
month?
not.
They are not. So if we choose to do our own program, we could opt out. If the county decided that they wanted to do something, we could opt out the $36 a month, so our citizens won't be taxed again.
Assuming that they would honor that, yes. And I would think that that would be grounds for
I think they
them.
would want a nominal fee though to run those convenience centers. They would.
Bridgeton does not get
totally give
charged.
you- Sir?
Bridgeton has not been charged that nominal fee to run those convenience sites.
So if, are they gonna still continue charging the customers or the taxpayers $36?
I do not know what their plans are.
Well, they can, because they can say it's for the convenience centers. That's,
Sounds like we need to have another meeting.
But
it sounds like you know the answers.
From what I've been told, I think they're still going to have a nominal charge. It'll be $4 or $5 for the year and this is supposedly to pay for the increased hauling that's going to be at the convenience centers, since that's where all the other recyclables is going to go. But it's not going to be $36.
Let me ask you a question, and this is industry-wise. Communities that, and of course, state mandates that you at least have convenience centers, but I would think you would find that cities that don't participate in a curbside pickup, if it's every other week or monthly or weekly, that those are cities that probably have a higher incidence of littering. Does that come into play in your industry? Do you find that
This
cities
is a
that,
very unique situation here in Craven County as far as the countywide curbside program and 18-gallon bins on how it's written. Because of how it stands now, my company has to pick up as many 18 up to 30-gallon bins that's out there at your home filled with recyclables. There's no limit to just one bin. So we pick up quite a bit. And you can know with Amazon, the stacked cardboard is going to be a problem when it stops, because they're going to leave it out there. We're not going to pick it up. But I don't know what's going to happen. And you have to remember, too, in the county and in the city, any extra trash you have to buy a sticker for. A sticker these days for a 30-gallon trash bag is like $3.30. So even if you're putting your trash in the trash and you're using the stickers, you're going to pay more than you are for the once a week on the recycle service if you buy 2 stickers a month. So we have no dog in this fight. We're just trying to offer solutions, and we're willing to do something short-term with the city if they would like us to. We offered to do something short-term with the county because our big problem is we couldn't, besides the fact the processing is costing so much, is we were going to have to replace all the trucks. They're 8 years old, and we had already told the county this last year, look, it's not going to be the same. We can't do it for the same amount of money. When a garbage truck has got a $20,000 steel surcharge on it these days, we're paying over up to $340,000 for a garbage truck these days. So we were going to have to purchase 8 of those to start this contract over with. Our trucks will last for a little while longer, so if the city wanted to do something in the interim, we could. And we offered to delay the counties, and I'm not trying to tell you all anything to tell the county, but we offered to delay. We could still use our old trucks if they, even if they decided June 30th, we just would not be able to get the new trucks in for probably 3 or 4 more months. But we could use our old trucks if they stayed with the program.
what would be competing counties? What are the rate structures in other counties that are similar in geography to us?
Very few counties, mainly only rural counties, really have countywide programs for recycling. And we are willing to do subscription service in the city if anybody just wanted to do it on their own. The last one that I did was Alamance County. They have areas that are exclusive areas, and you can go in. And we're charging $7.95 for $95 every other week for that. But the county, the reason why the reason why the county contract went up so much is we have all the risk. It doesn't matter if because we're paying $60 or $70 a ton right now. In 3 years, if it goes up to $200 a ton, there's no negotiation piece in it. So we had to assume all the risk, and that really drove the price up some as well. Typically, when we do it with towns and things, we say, well, this is what it's going to be for the processing piece this year. And if you're willing to, if we supply the documentation and show what it costs next year for your budget, are you willing to negotiate it up or down? And those kind of things to help keep the overall price down. But we could not do that with the county bid. They did not want anything to do with that.
Mayor, I have a comment.
Yes.
So just for the record, I found out that we have 100 counties in North Carolina, only 8 have a countywide recycling program. So that's a very,
like I said, it's
very low percentage. So Craven County is one of 8 counties, which I thought was really interesting, it led me to further information that the majority of the recycling is done by the municipalities and not by the counties. And I don't know if that's because
Unincorporated areas is very...
are just not participating in that. And I think, what I would like to see, I agree with Alderman Odom in that they should call the county commissioners. This was their decision. But I would like for us to be prepared with Plan B.
Right.
And I would like to still go ahead and put the RFQ out there and whatever, and let's have this pulled together. So regardless if they vote back for it or whatever, we may want to look at it at our own so it doesn't become a ping pong. If we're going to recycle, we're going to recycle. And we should, go down that path. If not, then we're at the mercy of somebody else. So I would just like to see us still move forward on it and then make the decision at the time we get all the information.
I agree.
Mayor?
Yes,
I have someone here that would like to make a public comment, so I'd like to make a motion to allow them to
Okay.
have that public comment.
And I'll second that.
motion second. Anybody have a problem with that? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Yes, sir. Come right up. Name
What's your
and
name and
address.
Hey, I'm Braden Welsh. I live at 1311 Bray Avenue. Thank you guys for commenting on this, especially when this was an issue that was thrust on y'all and on the public on such short term. Thank you, Waste Industries, for coming here. Obviously, you guys offered some solutions. And what I think you all have seen in the past 24 hours is not only that we do need to figure out some solution that the public wants recycling. I think this is indicative, though. We talk about New Bern being special a lot. I do think something we are lagging behind is green initiatives, though, in general. This isn't just a recycling problem we have at this point. I think we need to start getting innovative in the ways we deal with what we have going on around us. I mean, we can look at the Neuse River. We can look at what happened with Hurricane Florence. We are having a detrimental impact on our environment. Whether you believe in climate change or whatever, we know that this pollution is not good for the waters, it's not good for us. And I think a lot of the public is now, when you have something like recycling that's been a part of American life and part of small town cultures for a while now, you get used to it, and have it taken away or offered to be taken away, it gets people mad or frustrated or whatever. And I think what we've seen now, though, that this is kind of, not only would we be moving backwards, I believe if we want to be one of those small towns that really shows like a way for other rural countries or rural towns and counties like New Bern to really make a difference across the world and the countries, we have to start local with coming up, not only staying where we were and not just keeping ourselves from moving backwards, but coming up with ideas to move forward. I think it would behoove the city, like you all are discussing tonight, to discuss your different options with Waste Industries. But I also believe that the city, due to the large amount of public interest in this issue and just public interest in general across the country now for green initiatives, to, maybe come up with, I don't know exactly your rules on how you come up with advisory boards and such, but possibly some form of advisory board with community members such as doctors, engineers, scientists, health professionals, and activists, or whatever, to really come up with new ways that we could do that are cost effective to the city, that don't just keep us having a recycling bins, but allow us to have a cleaner city, a pristiner city, so that we can show, I don't know what all of your personal beliefs are on, the environment and what we're doing to it, but what we do know is we can't wait for the state or the federal government to implement these changes for us. Small towns across America are going to be the ones that create these new ideas that move us forward, whether it's, using Waste Industries or finding companies or artists that use old materials so that we can create something new. Because the other thing is, the reason we have the states and counties is New Bern's very different from Raleigh. New Bern's very different from the mountains. We have different needs and services. So we have to figure out something new that works for us, so that we can create a plan for other cities to follow through, much like we did, like we revitalized downtown in the 80s, and now that Main Street plan is used across the country to build economic development. I think it would behoove the city to create a plan that is now for environmental development. We don't have very long. It's a small planet when you think about what we keep doing, and we can't get it out. It's not biodegrading, and so we can't continue to do this And I don't believe that's going to happen in my lifetime, but maybe my children or grandchildren, they will be living in a disgusting world, and we can't wait on the federal government or the state or the county, obviously, to do it for us. We have to work on it from a city. But that's all I had to say. Thank you guys for opening up public comment.
Thank you.
Anybody else that wants to make a comment? Anybody else?
Good evening. I'm Margaret Hicks. I live at 411 Johnson Street, and it was just brought to my attention today that the recycling is changing. And I was asked to come over and speak. I recently moved here, a year ago, moved here from Colorado. And I was asked to speak on how they handled the recycling there in Colorado, which is done through a private company, such as Waste Industries. We used Western Disposal. And they not only did the recycle, they did the trash. So the cost, they added a cost to recycle to our trash bill. And it wasn't an option. You just had to pay for that recycling. She's mentioning doing trucks. They have amazing trucks so that they just drive with the new recycle bins, which are actually larger than the trash cans. The trucks would come in, just pick up the recycle bins. You're paying for it, so you put everything into one bin. Now, I don't know how this would work here, because hearing about the glass, having a difficulty recycling it or getting it to a recycle center. But with the larger bins, you were able to put all of your recyclables into one bin, and it was sorted there at the recycle center. But it just became, literally, you really looked at how you recycled your recyclables. One is you put in clean recyclables. I think some is going to be education if you want to move forward into a greater recycling program, is to educate the public about recycling and how you can help your recycle companies more easily recycle those materials. But that's how they did it in Colorado. They included it in the bill. I can't remember. I apologize. I didn't look up to see what they actually charged for that. But it was included in our trash bill. And we had 2 trash cans. If they're looking at new trucks, they have an arm that comes out, picks it up, dumps it in. And I think it worked well. I don't know for sure how much it's either costing the city to subsidize it or the county to subsidize it, or if it's being covered completely by what they're charging the consumers. But that's basically all I wanted to mention. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I would like to ask you one question. There is a lot of rumor in the county and city that a lot of the recycled goods wind up in the landfill. And could you, for the record, or not necessarily for the record, could you I'm hearing you say that it's mainly just glass. And I do know that China is not accepting a lot of the plastic and stuff. So
all I can tell you for sure is that everything that we pick up in the recycle program here in New Bern goes across the river to our facility, where it's put in tractor trailers and hauled to Jacksonville every day. Of course, they cull it through conveyor belts and pick out the trash and things. So there's a lot of what they call residual that they do pull out of it. Mm-hmm. It then goes to Raleigh, and that's where they make the decision on what else goes to the landfill. Mm-hmm. So. And it's mostly the contaminated, the cracked glass, etc. So there is some.
A question from the best?
Yes, before you finish.
Go right ahead.
Well, this information came from Craven County. This pamphlet came from Craven County. So now, am I correct to say after the 28th, customers still can get rid of their recyclables by taking them to one of these locations free of charge?
They can take it to one of the county sites free of charge, or we're going to be offering subscription service if none of the towns want to opt in.
Okay.
So. I just want to say, I think I would speak for a lot of residents that I run into that if it were to remain $36, I think that the residents would rather spend a little more, be charged a little more, knowing that the material was not winding up in the landfill, that it was being properly recycled. And even if you had to pay a little more to make sure that there became a market, a model market for the recycled goods, that you had to actually subsidize it to make it work, I think the residents they do not want it in the landfill.
Well, some things are turning around. The technology at the processors is getting a little more, more current, where not as many materials would have to go out the back end because of how they handle it at the processors. Also, right now they're building a plant, one in Alabama and one in South Carolina, the Chinese are, so they can have all the material go there so they can inspect it and process and put it together like they want it to ship. Of course, it's adding cost to it by them being the middleman. We actually own a company in Colorado, Alpine Waste, and we just invested. We actually owned a MRF there, and we're one of the largest processors in the state of Colorado. We just invested another $2.5 million on these conveyors and blowers and magnets. We have someone from China that sits in our plant. It's just in the South where we are, landfill space is just so cheap. No one wants to make those investments yet, but it's turning around where they're going to have to because legally you're not supposed to throw an aluminum can or a drinkable bottle in the landfill anyway. So here in North Carolina, so they're going to have to do something. But
okay,
I wasn't finished, but I had another question for you. So after June 28th, the county was going to cease the curbside service. They're going to have the 7 sites that they currently have still where
yes, ma'am.
Customers can come and drop off their recyclables.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and trash.
Well, they have to bring the trash with a sticker.
Okay. So then, how long is these 7 sites going to stay up? Are they going to still be operational even after the county?
I can't speak for the county, but I have not heard anything about them closing any of these sites at all. I mean, I don't think they would be able to. So.
In the subscription service would be, I would pay a fee for you to come to my house and pick up.
Yes, ma'am.
How much is that?
Well, it all depends on how many people sign up. We're looking, depending on where you are, between $6 and $8 if I have to bill you direct for once a week.
That's okay.
So, and that's just me throwing it out. It depends on where you are. It's like Mr. Stevens says, you guys here are very compact. You're very close to us. The more that, and you have to remember, a lot of your businesses already have it here and already paying us direct. So there's 45,000 homes in Craven County that all of a sudden aren't going to have any recycle service after June 28th. So we have several thousands that have it as direct billed from us. So we're having to plot it and look at it and see where they are to see where we can go and at what kind of rates. So.
We need to have all this information. I think it's important that, if it's,
with that information.
Mark, when you come back, if people got it on their own, what it's going to cost for us, we need to have all of that so we can make good informed decisions and our citizens can know what the information is as well. I think that's really important.
But still, please call your county commissioner and let them know how you feel.
Will you pick up the recyclable bins on the last day?
We will probably make a run at picking up as many as we can, but I can't imagine in a million years. I live in Havelock, I still have ARS waste management bins in my house that never got picked up from 3 haulers ago. So we'll make a run at it. If they're out there, we'll pick them up. And
I can imagine just what's going to happen is if you dump it, throw it back down, next week it's going to be full sitting out there and the service will be gone.
And that does be a problem. I have been to other areas. We've taken over county contracts, and the other hauler didn't pick their carts up, and the people just continue to pick up or put trash in both. So we're going to try to pick them up. But some people use them for dog food and everything else. These are 18-gallon bins. They're not like having a trash cart. So.
Well, it's kind of yes.
They need you to go to
You have to talk to the mic. Nobody can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's
I was just wondering if possibly we could keep those bins and use it for those people that have to take the recycles, or that choose not to subscribe, but still want to recycle. They could use those recycles to transport their recyclables to the recycle center. It's going to be hard to get people to, unless they are truly concerned about recycling, to actually get them to drive their recyclables to a facility. If they have the bin, I mean, that might be one way to get them, to encourage them to go ahead and take the recyclables to their recycle center. And hopefully, once we find out what the subscription is, which I understand that probably is going to be difficult, not knowing who's going to subscribe and who's not. But, you know, to find out what our costs are going to be. But those recycle bins might be better left with the homes so that they have the way to transport their recyclables. Again, my opinion. So.
Let's, if it's the board's pleasure, let's wait and see if, I think the county might take this back up, and let's kind of, if they don't do something, we can maybe have a workshop. I know we have budget meetings coming up and all that, but we can maybe have a workshop and.
Well, I think until Mr. Stevens has the information, there's no sense in, you know, I think if you want to show of hands, I think I'm committed. Most of this board is committed to some sort of recycling program. I think it's necessary. We need to do something about it. So we just need to know the costs, and then we can say, okay, we're going to include it with the trash bill, and it's going to be this. We're going to partner with Riverbend and Trentwoods. It's going to be that. We're going to let you go off on your own. It's going to be that, but we've got to have the information.
But I also agree with Alderman Odom in regards to if we do make that decision and then the county decides to, we're stuck with a contract and figuring out who's paying what. So as a board, are we able to put some heat on the commissioners ourselves as elected officials, or have conversations and say, listen, you know, this is something that you need to really be discussing again, so that we're not stuck in a situation where we're footing the bill and then they get so much heat from the citizens that they decide to go back to doing business as usual.
I would assume that if the county decides to take this back up, they would do it before June 28th. So, yeah, I would just soon see the city manager start putting the package together so we would be ready, and at least, you know, we'll know what the cost is going to be.
Well, the thing is, if the county comes back, their option is to double their fee, which would be the $78 a year. At this point, we could probably do it cheaper.
Well, we don't know that. That's
we don't know. I'm just saying we need to know all those numbers, and then, you know, I agree. We do need to partner. It is a duplication of services. If the county's going to charge us something plus this, then yes, that would be duplication. But again, I want to see all the numbers, want to know where we're at, and then we can make an informed decision.
I think years ago when this thing first came up, that there was a lot of resistance to the recycling anyway, and we don't have that resistance now. And what happened, I think the city incorporated with the county because it was economies of scale at that time, and the cultural conditioning of the public to start recycling was not there. But now the situation is that, as you have said, very few counties do it, and the reason they don't is the cities technically, from an algebraic sense, pay somewhat for the stranded cost of the rural families that the cities actually pay, subsidize the rate because it's much cheaper to collect in the cities. But again, we're going to recycle because we're not going to deal with this litter that would come with it. And I'm all for more recycling bins in the city anyway. Alderman Kinsey.
Yes, Mr. Stevens, would you be able to take all the information? It's a lot here to go through with all the different options, to have something ready for us by the next meeting that we can make a decision on.
I would not be able to have it for the next meeting because our next meeting is probably, what, two and a half weeks. I don't think that's an adequate amount of time to have contractors bid on it. I think by maybe the last meeting in May, I probably could have something, depending. as long as we can have that bid opening prior to, so that we know what that hard cost is going to be.
Okay.
So that's the only guarantee that I could probably give you at that point. But
So
the
do-
next meeting is probably not possible.
So
Okay.
you got enough consensus from the board to go ahead and put out a bid process just for
If-
What, do
reference?
you need a motion or just
If
direction?
consensus of the board is that they'd like for me to put it out to bid, then I will be happy to do so.
I think we
Please do
should.
so.
I agree. Just so we have the
I
information.
just, it's budget time, there's a lot of things going on. I don't want to kind of like reinvent the wheel if the county is going to meet and work something out. I had thought I had heard, and it might just be I was dreaming, but I thought that if you went to a once a month instead of a weekly, that the rate would be like $58 instead of the $72 to $75. I don't know where I heard that figure.
I did.
But now the question is, do the subscribers in New Bern want a once a month pickup? I don't think so. I think obviously a weekly is really good. Every other week maybe, but I don't think the residents I talk to want a monthly pickup. Because I think if you do that, I think you're gonna have more littering and less recycling. So I think you have to do weekly or.
And a whole lot of odor.
Yeah, amen.
But these are things we can continue to process. But again, I don't want to belabor the point if the county is going to figure something out. I don't know.
Well, I think we need to be ready in case they don't figure something out.
Okay.
You know, and I think, like, you know, Sabrina said, that it may come in cheaper for the city of New Bern.
Oh, it will probably.
So let's do it. Let's do it, you know, and let's get ready. And in case the county decides they don't want to do it, and even if the county decides they want to do it, maybe we should opt out if we can get it done cheaper.
I think another important ingredient component of this would be, I think I see that we lack a certain educational awareness to the public of recycling, and
Right.
I certainly, whatever company that we go with, I want somebody that the stuff's going to get used and not thrown in the landfill.
Well, I'm just glad to hear that they carry it to the processing plant in Jacksonville, because I was told that everything, with the exception of the aluminum cans, went to the landfill in Craven County.
Well, maybe we don't do that.
Well,
I moved my office to New Bern, and I see it come in every day, go every day.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That makes me feel a lot better.
Anybody else about this item?
So,
You go ahead and make your motion if you
oh,
want
is
to.
it
or do
going to
you
be a
want some
motion or just direction?
You
I
just-
think you just need
direction.
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 You know,
Whatever,
Let's
as long
show
as I do.
hands of Alderman Astor and Alderman Bingham here. I'll go with y'all.
there you go.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Let's get some good prices.
Yep.
Offer some good services
Thank you
for
all
our
for the people
citizens.
that came out tonight. We appreciate you being here. Thank you.
And we will do something. Okay, let's go to item number, that would be item number 7 at this time, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you very much, Mayor, members of the board. As Colleen comes up to get the presentation started, tonight is the opportunity for myself to distribute the copies of the proposed budget, which I think all of you have in front of you, for fiscal year 1920. And I'll share a quick PowerPoint presentation that, make sure it's working out, yep, of general highlights. One of the things, too, I think you have at in your booklet as well, is the schedule of fees. Normally, it's kind of been a trend for y'all to see that about right when we're adopting the budget. JR and I both thought it'd be more appropriate for you to see those fees now as part of the budget process, just in case y'all were to make any kind of changes to those fees, schedule of fees, which may impact the budget. It's highly doubtful that would be major impacts, but it could potentially be some impacts that we may need to investigate. So you do have a schedule of fees that is also included in your budget packet. All right, so getting into the city manager's budget overview, same processes that we've done year over year. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the methodology, the highlights of the proposed budget, the historic trends that we're seeing with regards to our different funds, board considerations that were included into the budget, and ultimately some conclusions, comments, and questions. So we have an executive budget team that's used We take direction from the board, from our retreat, and from other actions that the board take at our typical business meetings to formulate the budget. That budget team consists of myself, Director of Finance, Mr. Savatelli, the Director of Human Resources, Ms. Hayes, and our Accounting Manager, Ms. Mulliken. The budget presented will maintain our current level of operations, and departments were asked to submit these budgets that identify deficiencies in their operating accounts. Capital projects obviously are always heavily vetted based on replacement needs, as well as some of the initiatives and future growth of the city. We'll also see revenue increases in the sales tax that are realized based on the economic growth of the market this year, which was very good. It was a very good sign that we saw the sales tax increase. Unfortunately, some of it may have come at the result of the impacts of the hurricane. The ad valorem taxes, however, were relatively flat. As a matter of fact, they went down just slightly, maybe about $80,000 or $90,000, which is not a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things, but they did stay relatively flat. I would expect those ad valorem taxes to go up the following year because people will have restored their homes. They've requested adjustments to their tax bill based on the damages that were as a result of the hurricane. And ultimately, as they get those repaired, or they raise their homes, or the internal components are replaced, obviously that will add that value back, so that it is hopeful that that ad valorem tax value will increase during our next fiscal year of 21. The property tax rate is proposed to increase this year to 48.22%, 48.22 cent on the dollar, or the $100. From 46. That is a result of us absorbing and removing the stormwater fee. That was a direction of the board at the retreat, was to take the stormwater fee away and to make a revenue neutral stormwater or a tax rate increase to accommodate that stormwater fee into our general fund. Also, you'll see in the budget as you review it, it's a rather large document, so you've got some time to review that before our budget meetings. We have aligned a good bit of this budget towards the Board of Aldermen strategic goals and objectives, and I'm going to highlight a few of those. Some of the highlights of it are the Redevelopment Commission, which was formulated. There's some money that's put in there as seed money for that. The community rating system, it was kind of the consensus of the board for us to take some immediate action on the community rating system and to try to bring us into full 100% compliance with that. That's going to require some money for us to do so. We're down to 8 to 10 properties, Mr. Ruggieri, would you say that's about right, remaining that can get us into the full compliance. And we obviously invested in our staff. That's part of our goals and objectives of the board, as well as maintain our fiscal responsibility, invest in the city infrastructure, and promote economic development. So some of the budgeted highlights: investing in staff and maintaining our fiscal responsibility. I'll first hit on the personnel items. The FY20 budget you have before you tonight has a net increase of only one position. We added a facilities maintenance crew supervisor and sewer collections. We plan to not backfill one of the administrative positions. That's the assistant city manager. We also added a business analyst and assistant in the electric admin to help with key accounts and the formulation of strategies to potentially see and continue to absorb or reduce our rate and to absorb possibly some of the wholesale rate increases that we may incur in the future. It'll also allow us to look at some efficiencies within the electric admin or electric department as a whole. We had a realignment of two positions in the street. One transferred from streets to the public works admin, and then we had one that also transferred to the garage due to our consolidation, which we will be having a ribbon cutting in the very near future, as we are almost complete with the construction activities at the garage over on Glen Burnie and Noose Boulevard. We have a reclassification of two positions, electric admin and sewer collection. And finally, we have a combination, as we kind of propose to the board, of a cost of living adjustment so that we can go from year to year to year to keep up with market changes in salaries for positions, as well as a merit-based salary adjustment is proposed for the qualifying employees, and that is entirely based on the score that they had based on their performance. that highlight, as far as the cost of living adjustment, based on performance, we had a one that was a 0. So if we had a poorly performing employee, they would only get the cost of living adjustment of 1.2%. That keeps everybody in the same band, consistent with where the market is for that. Otherwise, if you don't have it in that band, you run into the issues that we have with compression that we've had in the past, and we've overcome that. We did the salary market study in the prior fiscal year and completed that. We've got everybody adjusted now, and also adjusted for some of the compression-related issues, so we don't want to have that happen again. In doing so, the other proposed increases based on performance on top of the 1.2 is a 1.3% increase, a 1.8% increase, and a 2.3. So the total, if you had a rock star employee that performed extremely well, they could potentially look at a 3.5% increase. If you had an employee who was an average employee, they would be looking at a 2.5% increase. So it really goes towards performance, and those who are poorly performing obviously need to be on work plans to begin with, but they would only receive the cost of living adjustment to keep us up with the market. That would be effective beginning on July 1 of 2019, which would be the first pay period essentially of the fiscal year. Moving on to our funded positions, that you can see that the total of all funds, which is 473. 305 in our general fund, and then obviously our water, sewer, electric funds, 37, 41, and 80 respectively. Solid waste fund is our leaf and limb primarily, because all of our contractual services our waste collection services are handled contractually, and then 2 other positions, and those generally are through MPO and some of our other smaller funds. Budget highlights. The next item is investing in staff, ensuring public safety meets requirements, and maintaining our fiscal responsibility. We're budgeting to replace 10 vehicles this year in our police department to kind of keep us on that schedule. They have frontline vehicles that operate high levels and need to respond during emergency situations. This will allow us to remain on a sustainable replacement cycle. Those vehicles have been identified and do meet the replacement schedule. Our fire department training and inspection emphasis on their budget and continued execution of their strategic plan that was adopted, and personal protective equipment to meet our national fire protection standards. That's also included in their budget as well. In our Parks and Recreation, we want to maintain our fiscal responsibility, enhance our Parks and Recreation opportunities, and invest in city infrastructure. All the items that we have up the red up there at the top are some of the initiatives of the board. We have a renewed emphasis on the maintenance and improvements for parks, ball fields, playgrounds, recreation centers, etc. I think if any of y'all have recently visited some of our parks, you can see a significant change in the quality and the look of those parks through the improvements that Mr. Hughes has done and his staff, as well as the maintenance activities. We've got a gentleman on board that used to be a turf management head groundsman with a golf course, and he's really gone to where we actually spray weeds, so we're not mowing with the frequency that we did, because we're not mowing weeds, which grow faster than your typical grass. So that's been very helpful, and a lot of the parks are receiving some refurbished material with regards to mulch beds, and also with our Parks and Recreation amenities with swings and slides and things like that. Funding for special recreation activities and youth sports. We've kind of thrown in some emphasis here with increasing our youth sports participation levels, as well as special recreation activities, those being some of the things like the concerts in the park and movie nights and things like that in the park. Outdoor pickleball courts we're going to implement and change some of our existing courts that are underutilized and change those into some outdoor pickleball courts, as well as the major Kidsville renovation, which we are fundraising for now. We're continuing to do that, and I think it's our plans, Foster, when to start hopefully on some of the Kidsville renovations. Later in June. We have a master plan. I think we're going to have Foster come up and kind of show y'all the master plan that came out of the input session that we had from the public. I've seen that. It's very exciting. A lot of the input that was provided from the community was incorporated into the plan. I think you will be very excited to see that. Obviously, the implementation of the Martin Marietta Park Master Plan, we have received not only the PARTIF $475,000 PARTIF grant, we've also received another grant from CAMA for access to waterways. We continue to seek those, and we will begin some construction activities out there this year as the $475,000 PARTIF funds, we have to spend those within a 3-year period. We have also a very major item, which is the redevelopment of the Stanley White Recreation Center post our Hurricane Florence issues that we experienced. We're currently awaiting the 428 mitigation process, and just to kind of give you a quick update on that, you know, the staff has been working with the engineer and architect that we consulted with to provide estimates on the replacement value. They have started putting those numbers together. We'll probably have a final report and have them present that to you in about 2 weeks. So hopefully the next board meeting we can have them up here and have that completed at that point. Obviously, we'll need to let our consultant look at that, make sure that they're good with the numbers as well, because that'll be part of what we submit to FEMA for the potential replacement Stanley White Recreation Center. Going into our enterprise funds, maintaining our fiscal responsibility once again and reinvesting into our city infrastructure. We have stable and unchanged utility rates from fiscal year 19 into our fiscal year 20. So our water, sewer, and electric rates will remain the same. We did see a wholesale rate increase. We had that discussion several weeks ago, but we have incorporated that wholesale rate increase into the budget without affecting the rate of the electric rate. So that's a good thing. We've done so through rate stabilization funds and some reduction in expenditures within the organization. We have potential electric rate increase that may be needed in FY20. Obviously, once we get an idea of where that is in about January, is typically when the KEMPA comes down with that. Right now, as we discussed with y'all at our board meetings when we talked about the electric rates, it is our hope and our intent that we could potentially absorb that for some period of time. But we don't know what that rate increase could be. If it's at the rate that they're predicting, then we could potentially do that. If it comes in higher, then obviously we need to revisit that and calculate those numbers at that time. Continued Township 7 improvements and West New Bern improvements with our water and sewer systems, and some additional water and sewer systems with regards to replacements, typical wear and tear on our pump systems, especially over, excuse me, in our low pressure pump system on the other side of the Trent River in the south side of our limits. And some vehicle replacements and equipment as well that's included in this budget. City improvements, we're looking to maintain vehicles and equipment to provide support for the city, replacing our aging equipment and vehicles in predetermined replacement cycles. Obviously, we've kind of had an informal replacement cycle process that was put into place several years ago. We're still trying to utilize that to highly vet some of our capital investment and when we replace these items. And we have a continued focus on some of the projects that begun in our prior years. Volt Center is a big one. That construction is progressing very nicely and should be complete very soon on the portion that the community college will be housed in. The train depot is another one that has kind of garnered some, I guess, that's been rekindled as far as the fire goes, as well as the Kidsville and Martin Marietta Park. So those are projects that have kind of been trending over several years that we will continue to focus on in this year's budget. Transportation, this year we have put in $500,000 budgeted for various improvements on our city streets. Typically we've been budgeting a little bit more over the past several years, but as you'll see, item number 7, we've completed $7.04 million.
Advance this line.
Sorry, I forgot to hit the fast forward button. We've completed $7.04 million in resurfacing projects since 2015. Our street rating system was reevaluated back in 2018, and what we've seen is a very significant increase in that rating system. Matt, would you? 85 is now what we're at, which is a very good score as an overall city system with regards to our street resurfacing rating, our rating for our streets. So we backed that down a little bit this year to try to get some of these other initiatives done. Those maintenance activities that we do may include some resurfacing, but a lot of it may be more some typical maintenance activities such as crack sealing, full depth repairs, and some sidewalk and curbing improvements as well. So that'll kind of be spread out a little bit over those. We put in an additional $85,000 that was budgeted for some sidewalk maintenance items. And obviously one of the big highlights was moving the stormwater fund from its own enterprise fund back into the Public Works Department within the general fund. Here's kind of an overall view of what all the different funds look like. As you can see, the general fund is down 2.64% from the adopted 18-19 budget. The water fund is pretty much even, so is the sewer. Those went up basically fractions of 1%. Electric department is slightly up 1%, most of that coming from the wholesale rate increase that we saw that we're absorbing and not passing on to the customer through the retail rate. Stormwater, you see the big decline there. That's taking it out from its own fund, putting it into the general fund. Solid waste, we see a small increase in that budget. Typically that's due to an increase in the CPI for the contract that we have. It's built in each year. And then the other funds are some of our minor funds, and I'm happy to highlight any of those if you wish to do so.
Why did the 911 decrease 25%?
Typically, JR, do you have any specifics on the exact reason why that one went down so much?
That was what we were provided by the state.
Yes, it's normally funding. It's an offsetting revenue. It has to balance just like any other. So if we get a certain amount of funding, we offset that with a certain amount of expenditure, and that's normally what it comes from. It may be from replacement of our 911 computer systems. It could be from a lot of different things that we do.
We also, as I recall from last year, we budgeted to utilize some of the fund balance from last year as well, which would contribute to that decrease.
That's correct. Always kind of produce a little bit of trend lines over the past several years. This goes back from fiscal year 13-14 to our current fiscal year proposed. As you can see, the trend line continues to kind of increase, but that should be expected over time. The cost of goods and services, the cost of personnel, all that stuff trends up a little bit over time, but as you can see, it went down significantly from where we were last year, and it kind of keeps us in line with kind of where we've been as far as the trend line goes year over year. Next is our water fund revenue expenditure trend. As you can see, that one's kind of trending downwards. I kind of expected that trend line to flatten out over time because our water fund, as we see a lot of the expenditure costs as far as our revenues, we're starting to see some lower revenue numbers in our water fund. Oftentimes that's due to savings with low flow toilets that flush, low flow sinks, reductions in household usage. It could be a lot of different things, but our revenue numbers continue to trend a little bit downward on that, while our expenditures continue to kind of go up. So what we're going to see is that red dashed line will actually starting to flatten out over a period of time. If we start seeing what it did year over year, it's going to kind of start to flatten out. I think what you're seeing is a pretty strong trend on those last three budget years where they're fairly even. A lot of the variation in that is reflective of some capital improvement projects or some capital purchases. Oftentimes those are being done with cash proceeds because we have the ability to do that within that department. Same thing with sewer. You can see the trend lines going down, but as you can also see, a lot of that is starting to kind of flatten out. We had an anomaly year where we had to do some significant investments in the 17-18 year, but as you can see, those numbers kind of fluctuate depending on some of the capital improvement projects that we have from year to year, and some of the replacement things. Anytime you're replacing a vac truck, those are $400,000 or $500,000 a piece. So obviously there's some significant expenses in our sewer department and investment into our capital projects within the sewer department. Electric fund, obviously it's got a great trend. The great trend being that it's trending downward, but as you can kind of see, once we hit the bottom line with the sale of the assets, it's kind of starting to creep upwards. A lot of that is associated with our rate increases, our wholesale rate increases that we're seeing, and some of our reinvestment back into the system. And a lot of the things that we purchase within the electric fund, given its financial stability, is with cash, which is a good position to be in. We will also continue to look at potential revenue bond options for other significant electric improvements, but obviously you will all hear about those whenever we do so. And I think Charlie kind of highlighted and told you about some of those with regards to substation expansions and also a new substation to help with our resiliency and flow of power into the city to help backfeeding during outage type situations. Just kind of a comparison with where New Bern is, which is located at the bottom of the screen, in comparison to the rest of the cities. As far as our 18-19 tax rate, we still remain the lowest of all of those comparable cities: Greenville, Goldsboro, Kinston, Washington, Havelock, Wilmington, and Wilson. Our collection rates typically at 98.5% to 99%. Sometimes they're a little bit higher as you go on. If you look back at previous years, because of back tax collection, we'll collect those. Obviously, our last valuation was in 2016, and our estimated annual ad valorem was at $14,852,218.
Mark, it's actually a little lower than that. Most of those cities have stormwater fees, which we don't have in this budget, so it's actually 2.2% lower than the 48.4822.
That's correct. Yes. They would have stormwater fees separate of that in a fee, typically. Stormwater
I'm saying that we don't carry one, so we're not carrying one this budget year, so it's actually.
Yeah, it's kind of not an apples to apples comparison, if that's what you're looking to. Overall budget numbers and trends. So we've put in $71,000 our general fund contingency just for any kind of smaller changes that occur during the year that we can absorb in our contingency. This current budget does not include any potential revenue changes, but we have identified sources should the board wish to consider any kind of new initiatives. We have absorbed the wholesale power cost increase effective 4/1/19. Our residential and commercial investment in New Bern is still strong despite the recent disaster. I talked to Mr. Ruggieri today, and interestingly enough, I think we had 51 new permits last year, and right now we have CO permits of 153 or so right now, and we still have 2.5 months left of data to put into that. So that's a very good trend with regards to residential data. And our commercial, obviously, we've seen some of the growth of the commercial corridors and their continued investment. We're getting ready to have a new hotel go up behind the mall. We've got a dentist office, I think, going up right beside Chick-fil-A. We've got a new Aldi that's getting ready to go vertical. So we've got some very significant growth opportunities. The out parcels of the new Columbia Development Group, the New Bern Marketplace project, that should be hopefully filling up fairly soon. Phase 2 of that project will begin. So I think our commercial corridors are really starting to show some significant growth, which is a great thing. So finally, with some conclusions, balanced budget with revenue neutral update to the ad valorem tax rate that includes our stormwater fee. No additional update unless the board so chooses to fund any kind of other projects, so we can include that if we do so through this budget process. We have a net change of 1 employee. We've included COLA and merit-based salary increases for our employees. We've maintained a high level of service to our citizens and continue to do so. And we are looking to continue our execution of multiple projects that we began through the prior year. Our utility rates, we are continuing those with possible electric increase if we need it. But right now, our wholesale rate that's being passed along to us that actually took effect in April 1 of this year, we're absorbing in this upcoming budget year. We're continuing to focus on replenishing our fund balances post-Hurricane Florence and restoring our assets to pre-disaster state or improved per 428 funding. So that's one of the priorities over the next year, because getting the funds back from the state is a very long, tenuous process. I think Alderman Astor can attest to that as we finally are closing out Hurricane Irene this year, hopefully. With our capital improvement plan in place, general fund balance where it is, I think we've are trying to reduce our debt, continue on a more pay-as-you-go process. We do a very good job in our electric, water, and sewer funds on doing it as a pay-go. We could continue to do better in our general fund, but it's very difficult when we pass that along through about 6 or 8 different departments to work through. We'll be prepared for any kind of economic growth in New Bern. We continue to evaluate our policy and revisions to ensure the growth is smart and maximizes positive impacts to our city. Upcoming budget meetings, we have 2 workshops scheduled. Hopefully, we may not need the second one, but we have it scheduled if we need it. Plan on being here on Tuesday, April the 30th, starting at 1 o'clock to present this more detailed budget evaluation for you to consider, as well as a workshop on Wednesday, May the 1st, if needed. We have a public hearing that's tentatively scheduled for the 14th of May. If that needs to be adjusted, we can do so. A lot of that may be determined whether or not we consider some of this stormwater stuff and incorporating in the budget. We can make that change at any time, but if you wanted to incorporate it into the budget, we could definitely do that. Right now, we've tentatively set the budget adoption for May the 28th, and once again, that could be dependent upon what we decide to do with recycling. And staff stand ready at any other workshops prior to the budget adoption that we can schedule. We'll be there. Any comments and questions?
The 2 things on there that have not been discussed are the board's concern about drainage situation, obviously FEMA and USDA, and what other general fund expenditures the city might make to get our city where we want it. But the other thing is the elevator.
Absolutely. We
And
talked about it today.
I'll just let you go into that if you want to.
Well, I've spoken to the city manager about that today. I'm still concerned that we don't have a good plan in place with information to decide if we're going to fund an elevator or not. The city manager is going to try to get us some more numbers, because again, we can't make decisions if we don't have numbers. Roughly, we think it could be $1 million, $1.5 million to put a tower on the back area somewhere and bring an elevator up here. Is that what we want to do? I don't know. We need, then there's a ramp. Do we put it on the inside? Do we put it on the outside? And we need to get somebody who is very knowledgeable and has done work like this in a historic building. We also, I'm going to work very hard to look for historic grants, SOS, Save Our Historic Structures through a historic trust. I think there's one out there. I've been talking to Morgan Potts about looking at. And the other work that needs to be done here, we can see the damage from the storm, the plaster's peeling. This is our iconic building. This is, we've chosen to call this our home for generations. And if it's going to be our home, then we need to take care of it. We tell our citizens when their buildings are dilapidated what they need to do. So we're not a dilapidated state, but I know there's some insurance funds coming. There's other things. I just need some information. We can't make decisions. I would love to include something in this budget for us to move forward. So hopefully you can get us some of that information.
Just real quickly, and I don't know that it would necessarily impact the budget. And the reason why is because to give direction of the board or from the board to staff to go seek a consultant to do some evaluation and provide some estimates, maybe some renderings of what can be done. Generally speaking, when we take these large-scale projects like that, we're going to establish a project fund for them. So what we do is we set those aside. That expenditure, yes, it's going to come out of the general fund, but it doesn't necessarily impact the budget, because ultimately, if you're talking about $1 million or if you're talking about a $4 million project, you're going to have consulting fees that are going to be associated with that, and that's going to be paid generally through interest principal payments. So we would set up a complete project fund, which wouldn't necessarily impact this general fund budget in the end game. Does it come out of funds? Obviously, yes, we're going to have to pay for it, but in the end game, it doesn't really impact the budget.
So what do you need from this board to move forward so we can start heading in that direction?
I think it would be great if the board, if you're talking about finding someone who is very knowledgeable of historic buildings, structural capacities of what these walls can handle, where we should potentially locate and show multiple options, potentially if we need to redo some space here or there to incorporate something. Obviously, you're talking about an architect engineer that's going to have the time to focus on something like that. And I think it would probably be advisable, if the board wished to look at that route, is to recommend to staff to seek out an RFQ for those kinds of services.
Board members, would you be willing to support me on doing that? I think the time has come.
Yes.
Our citizens can't even get up the steps who want to be here. I think it's important. We have many disabled citizens. That Brandon Hildreth, I think of it. Every time I see his mother, I can't even hardly look at her in the face, because she asks about why her son can't get in City Hall. So I really would like for us to at least take this next step and try to do this. So if you'll give Mr. Stevens direction, we can move forward.
You want
I see
just
yes.
direction, or you want some form of motion?
You want a hand
Sure.
or whatever?
What we need to do to set up the fund.
Or to, well, he's got to get the information.
Hire an architect.
Hire
Yeah,
an
I think the best thing to do now would probably be to develop an RFQ. Once that comes back, we negotiate the price, and then we would set up a project fund based on that negotiated price to start the architectural engineering.
Well, you know, my experience, and not only on the board, but for all these years since the first plans I know of were developed, which actually they're the blueprints of this building incorporated, I know there. But it always seems to, the discussion kind of ends when it gets over about $600,000 or $700,000. I think that some of the ideas have been floated involve another building, and that's $3 to $4 to $5 million. I'm looking more like the shaft over here, or the incorporation of the original plan. But anyway, the value engineering of it's about $1 million, $1.5 million. So
let's see that. Where does it go? What does it look like? How do we reorganize it? Does it come in through there? Does it come in through somewhere else? You know, I'd like to at least get the experts to come in here and lay it out and tell us what
I'd
we
say
need to
right
know.
now, put a budget of like $1 million to $1.5 million. Hoping we could get some grants, state grants or whatever.
Right, but let's,
$1
we gotta get the
million
people.
for a consultant, is that what you're
No,
saying?
no.
No, we don't even need a budget now. I mean,
No,
we
we don't
don't,
need a budget now.
we don't have any idea what it's gonna cost
Right.
until we get an architect.
Right.
What I'm saying though is that you have to kind of, we know as a board, we're probably not going to agree on $4 or $5 million addition to the city hall for elevator. I think you have to bring it within a relevant range of what the affordability factor of the city of New Bern putting an elevator in this building would be. And I, for one, just think about $1 million, $1.5 million is that upper plateau of what this board is going to approve. That's
Okay,
just my crystal ball.
That sounds reasonable. Let's get the guy, let's get the consultant in here and let's look at them and tell us where it would go for that kind of money or whatever.
Who would be in favor of that?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And on the drainage issue, what's for the ensuing year, your ideas on drainage?
As far as the drainage, we have a lot of things that are kind of being played right now with FEMA and the potential USDA project. Obviously, if we get those grant funds, we will need to come back and do a budget amendment. It's kind of hard to figure out what those are and whether they're going to be approved or not. I think that budget amendment will obviously be offset by the revenues that we're going to get from those organizations. We'll have some expenditures, we'll bid it out, but we'll have the revenue that would come off of that from
What was your
USDA.
projection on fund balance?
Excuse me?
What was your projection on fund balance?
Wanna-
Because part of a budget amendment would involve probably the fund balance. So as long as it doesn't go below the 25-35% range, is that what you would?
If the board was choosing to go above and beyond what USDA and what FEMA was giving us as far as those projects, then yes, we would have to use fund balance. What I would recommend is we have Matt come back and give us an update at our next board meeting. He can give us an idea of where we are through the USDA process, the FEMA process. We actually are those employees working for us now, the 4 new ones? Monday. So we got 4 new employees that are coming to work for us for free, essentially through a program through the Workforce Development Center of New Bern, which is a great program. It's hopes that we can add 4 or 5 or so more. We've requested up to 13, I think was the number. So we're continuing to add to this, and they're going to be, those 4 are going to be sent to work with our stormwater division in clearing ditches like we've been doing. So what we'll do is if it's amenable to the board, we'll have Matt give us an update at our next board meeting on where we are with stormwater improvements for the city. And actually what we can do is also show our progress from start to finish on certain major tributaries that we had over the winter. Y'all probably seen the progress the stormwater division has made and their activities over the winter, and they've made some significant strides in clearing out some ditches. And the good thing about the USDA and the FEMA funds are those potential funds that we could receive could be potentially utilized for mucking out the ditches, and there's a big difference. We've been mucking out some. We've been trying to clear the paths, but that's some major arteries, Jack Smith Creek, some of the others that we have that are major arterial discharges for the city. Those would be included in these that require like barge access to get in to do that kind of work.
And for the 2019-20 budget, Mr. Stevens, I know you had talked some about some other flood mitigated drainage or pumping designs, and is that something that could be incorporated through, I know clean water is being funded just by the state right now. Is that something that really doesn't have anything to do with the budget but could do? Are you going to try to look into that this year as far as what we talked
yes.
about, the railroad and all that?
Matt's already kind of looking into some of those projects that we're looking at specifically that's related to the Duffest Canal area, also the one that comes out over on Washington Street. Some of those drainage tributaries area about some possible mitigation, the North Hills area, if there's ways in which we can do those. But obviously, in doing so, we're going to have to go through some analysis period. We can do some of that in-house. We've got Mr. Childs now working for us as well as Matt. They're going to go through some of that calculation, and at that point, we can potentially look to seek some grant funds for that, or if the board so chooses that they would like to come out of fund balance with those, we can do that. It's kind of hard to put a number on them right now without doing any of the engineering analysis on what the size of the pumps would be, what kind of infrastructure needs would be. So we're kind of in a prepping ourselves up for that.
Board? Okay, look forward to the workshop on the 30th.
Okay.
Board have anything else on this particular item? Seeing none, let's go to item number 8.
All right. And by the way, I just want to say thanks to the staff, Mr. Sabatelli. He's done a fantastic job of putting this budget together by himself in a lot of part because he's been down his admin assistant / budget person, so he's done a lot of that himself, and to the department heads as well. They've done a fantastic job putting their budgets together. So I'd like to say thank you.
Needs another cup of coffee, though. I'm worried he's going to fall asleep at the desk here because he's been pulling all-nighters trying to get this ready. So.
He's done a great job.
Appreciate everything staff's been doing on this.
Item number 8 is to conduct a public hearing and consider adopting an ordinance to annex property at 846 Highway 55 West. Othella Clarence Best and Sheila Best petitioned for their property at 846 North Carolina Highway West to be annexed to the city limits, and the board accepted the petition at its April 9th, 2019 meeting. The property is further identified as tax parcel ID 8-222-169, and after conducting the public hearing, the board is asked to consider adopting an ordinance to annex the property.
Okay. Board is okay. I'm going to go ahead and open a public hearing at this time. If anybody would like to come forward, make any comments, ask questions, or any statements about this item, you're more than welcome to come up at this time.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. The motion carries.
So now we have to adopt the ordinance, right?
Is there any questions by the board? No? Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that the board adopt an ordinance annexing property located at 846 West NC Highway 55, owned by Othella and Sheila Best.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Davis, do we need to do anything else on this item at this time? Let's go to item number 9.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Item number 9 is a discussion on Duffest 2019. As many of you are aware, Duffest is a city-sponsored event. It's held annually in May, as it's held in our ordinance as a city-sponsored event. This year, the Dufffield Residents Council would like to have this event in June. This would allow the event to coincide with activities that are planned for the Juneteenth celebration.
Yes.
At this point, I think, did you want to have Ms.
Yes.
Williams come up? She wanted to say a few things, if it's amenable to the board,
Yes, please.
regarding this new event. She's a representative here on behalf of the Dufffield Residents Council, and she wants to share with you information and answer any questions the board may have regarding this change.
Good evening, Mayor Outlaw, Aldermen and Alderwomen. My name is Carol Williams. I reside at 2906 Moore Avenue here in the Greater New Bern. I am the administrator for the Greater Duffest Residents Council and the coordinator for 2019 Duffest. I come before you this afternoon to request a one-time acceptance of a date change for Duffest 2019, which is usually held the Saturday before Mother's Day. This year, we have collaborated with Juneteenth. What did you say? What is Juneteenth? Juneteenth is a collaboration of young people inviting other young people to come together to learn about their culture and heritage, to bring enrichment to them. This is the first time this has been done, and we are in hopes of pooling time, talent, energy, and resources around multi-diverse events for a bigger impact for the greater good. These activities will begin on Monday, June 17th, and will run through Saturday, June the 22nd. I'm also requesting a stipend. Listen real good, a stipend, a small stipend of $3,000. The purpose for the stipend would be to ensure that this will be a well-worth and long-time remembered event for our citizens, and let them know that despite the disaster that New Bern has suffered, we still have joy, and we can continue to show it. Thanking you for your consideration and allowing me this opportunity to stand before you. Any questions?
I just want to thank you for coming and doing that presentation. Talina Massey has kind of coordinated. I've worked with them to coordinate a week-long celebration. They usually do something on Thursday. You were there last year and presented the proclamation. And I just think if we would be able to, probably not $3,000, maybe half, maybe $1,500, be able to donate to them so that they can have this festival. It would be the first festival since the hurricane, and the fact that Stanley White is not in operation, and that community was most definitely impacted by the hurricane. I think that it would be the least that we can do to make this festival something to remember, especially this year, kind of like how we did MumFest. They want to be able to celebrate as well. So that would be, my motion is that if we can donate at least $1,500 to the Greater Duffest Residents Council to help put on the Juneteenth celebration on Saturday, June 22nd.
So can we take that out of the community development funds?
I think we've probably, Brenda, we probably have 1,500 left in that, don't we? I'm pretty sure we did. Yeah.
Do we provide any of the other city-sponsored events with cash money like that?
We do in kind, so what do we provide in kind to Duffest? Because instead of in kind, maybe
if it's a city-sponsored event and they make requests, then it's considered to be in kind requests. So yes, we would provide support for them. It's typically not been the policy to provide financial support, but it's not to say that it's out of question.
We did for years though. Alderman Odom, I think when you came in, you guys stopped that. But we prior boards, we had that what was called special appropriations, and we did annually used to appropriate funds to the Duffest Residents Council for Duffest. So this has been done in the past.
Yep.
I'm not sure about the amounts, but we have appropriated funds in the past.
Yep. There's no doubt that we've appropriated funds in the past. The policy has been that, I reckon my concern is going to be the other city-sponsored events are going to get in line and come up and ask for funds as well. Do we turn them down, or what? Do we pay them as well?
I mean, my only statement is the fact that Stanley White is not up and running. This community suffered a great deal
Well,
during the
They don't have
hurricane.
that facility.
can we
They don't
give,
have that facility, and this is a way to help make it bigger and get more participation and be able to have a good festival. And it's a one-time. They're not going to come back next year or the year after that. It's a one-time. And if we have it and the manager is okay with it because he is able to have discretion over those funds, I don't think $1,500 is a lot of money to be able to make it good for the kids. We don't have anything
how about
there.
if we use our alderman funds to make up the $1,500? You know, because, I mean, we can give some of those funds to,
I don't think I have mine.
Yeah, I
We
donated
use
mine
them
to the
already, to the
signs.
signs, the banners. We pay
no,
for
I
the
think
banners.
you've got all of yours still. I just asked the other day because I was going to hit y'all up for some money. But
Well, no, I mean, I don't know if they
I
paid
don't-
the bills, but
Yeah,
you know,
shoot,
the
I gave
banners.
half my money for
Yeah,
the banners.
I certainly would give some of my money towards it. Yeah.
But if we have it in the fund for community development, they're a nonprofit. I don't understand why, if Mark is okay with it, we can't. For one
Yes, sir.
time.
I would just say that, to me, it's not the amount of the money, it's when the previous board, what Alderman Bingle referred to, we had a handful of nonprofits that historically the city had decided to fund those. The concern was why those and not others? So now when you get in the situation tonight, I certainly don't have anything against the efforts that they're putting on. I'm sure it's going to be a great event, but as Alderman Astor said, if you do it for one, now every other nonprofit, I think at one time there was 66, I think when we counted, could then come back and ask for funding. So you're getting an opportunity to pick and choose which ones you want to support, even though you may not have an issue with the nonprofit. When the money runs out, the money runs out, and then you're getting into a situation where it's a first come, first serve. So at the beginning of every year, everybody's going to be coming and asking for money. And that was my suggestion.
Alderman Bass?
Oh, I know what you're saying.
Alderman
yeah,
Bass?
yeah, that's a great idea.
I mean, why don't we use that money and then
You're talking about your travel expense.
well, it's not travel, it's their
It's
It's
our
travel
discretionary fund.
Yeah, but that's the money
Separate.
we're
Not in
using
travel
to pay
plans.
for
You have
those.
two separate.
Okay.
You have your travel money that's built into your governing board budget. You have your discretionary money that's built into
The
your
discretionary
special
money, you
appropriation.
may not have gotten the invoice yet for the Duffy Field.
Evidently have-
Well,
On
if I do
flags, for
mine,
flags
and you do
down,
yours, then that's
Broad Street.
$1,500.
Okay, Alderman Bass had a comment. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to ask a question. For our New Year's Eve event, did the city have to sponsor some of that money?
Yes.
Okay, so for the, is it Mary Berry Christmas, did the city have to sponsor any of that money?
No. No.
Mary Berry is in kind primarily.
Wow.
The New Year's Eve event was a lot of that money came from sponsorships, but there was some money expended for that.
Well, if the city can sponsor a New Year's Eve event, and here we have Duffest asking for $3,000, but Alderman Harris said $1,500, I don't see why we can't
Yeah, and I
contribute
guess,
and sponsors.
let me say this, I would support it at this time for a one time because of the fact that Henderson Park's been damaged, Stanley White, I mean, where they traditionally hold this is not there. So they will have to move it, do some other things, and for a one-time special situation as we have had, I would support appropriating those funds from the Community Development Fund.
And you choose not to use your discretionary funds?
Correct, because I think mine are, I have to check with the invoice. I thought the invoice was set. We paid those banners, the Thrive and Five.
Revive
Alderman Harris
5.
and myself.
Revive 5.
Yes, Revive 5. We sponsored those banners along with Swiss Bear and
Greater
some
Duffield
grant-
Residents
grant-
Council.
That's right, so it was 4 of us paying for
Yes.
them, and they look beautiful.
They
really
do.
Brenda, how much do I have? Yeah, I just did,
Oh, I didn't know if that was,
well, I just signed some for tonight. So,
Question. Mr. City Manager, can't you take funds out of your special appropriation fund? Don't you have a budget set that you can take some funds out of that?
As Alderman Harris alluded to, I do have some funds available in community development.
All of yours, 1,000.
so here's $1,380
just
right
work-
here between the two of us.
And 1,500, so there goes 3,000, go ahead. I'm just like,
I got it. You can have my discretionary.
okay.
And you can have the rest of mine. So that's,
And whatever,
You've got 1,000 left, I think.
I have
I
1,000
don't
left?
think you've spent any of yours.
Well, then they can
Is that
have all of
1,000 or
mine.
500
No,
you
she-
get each?
she's got $872 left.
Well, because I only thought it was we only need 500 each for that.
Well, whatever I have left over, please
Right.
donate to me,
And
because
same
I'm not gonna
thing-
use it by July.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
same
that's
thing
more
with
than
me.
the 1,500 right there.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, mine.
I need to follow up on that invoice.
Are you
though.
good with that?
Jan.
So yours,
Pounds.
okay,
I don't have but just shy of $400 left.
so then,
Yeah, and
whatever
I've got
I
some
need-
money in mine.
whatever I need
We'll
to make
up
it.
the difference.
Yeah,
Your motion never got a second, so that we're still just talking right now. It kind of died for lack of a second.
Well, I didn't
So
know she
in the
had made a
interim,
motion, but
we
I-
looked at the discretionary, and that seems to have
okay,
made
how we
it
get the
work.
money? They need to have the
Is
money.
that good?
That's what I.
can I get a second on that motion?
Well, wait a minute now. I mean, we already solved your problem with the discretionary.
Oh, so then I don't,
Do you want to do that?
And that way you'll keep
Are
it
you
out of city
amenable?
taxpayer
Are you
money.
amenable to that? That's what.
yes, whatever we gotta do to get them the funds.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, did you?
Digest all of that.
Do you want me to say the motion failed and that the board decided to use their discretionary funds?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
But please, no, I'll try to get up with Lynn Hairkel about the invoice. And she may have sent it to me. It may have been in my mail.
Carol, did you
somewhere,
figure that
but
out,
I
what
will
we're
definitely.
doing?
Excuse me?
Jamie will get with you on
Can I
Okay,
just
go ahead.
clarify to add to the clerk's minutes, the amount,
$1,500.
okay? And
However,
so-
we have to make that up.
So the mayor's
So
giving
the mayor's
1,000.
$1,000, you have 872 left,
So
so
then take the
500 out of the 872 and the mayor's 1,000 to make the 1,500.
Perfect.
Does that
Sounds
work?
good to me.
Okay.
And
Just as
are you
long as
still
we have
having it on
money
George
for that.
Street? Are you doing George Street this year?
No, we're going to have it at Stanley White.
Okay.
We're trying to keep the heritage
Gotcha.
and the love, there, and hopefully
Well, good.
build up the spirit of the community.
Sounds
Put
great.
it on your calendars, June 22nd.
I thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Anything else on that? Item number 9. Let's go to item number 10, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Item number 10 is consideration of the board to adopt a resolution approving a substantial amendment to the 2018 CDBG program. This came before you, and obviously needs to come before you again. Staff realized that the adoption of the amendment was sought too early. They should have delayed it till a public hearing was held at the Office of Development Services. So therefore, that public hearing was held on the 9th of April 2019. There were no questions or comments that were received during that time. So we're now asking the board to consider adopting a resolution approving the substantial amendments just to make sure that we're covering our bases and that it happened after the public hearing process.
Okay, and what is the board's pleasure on that item?
I'd like to make a motion that we consider adopting a resolution amending to the 2018 CDBG program.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle?
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris?
Yes.
Alderman Astor?
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw?
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey?
Yes.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Odom?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 11.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Item number 11 is consideration of the board to adopt a resolution indicating intent to consider an ordinance amending the election method for nonpartisan from nonpartisan with runoff to a nonpartisan plurality method and calling for a public hearing on the proposed change. As you may recall, recently directed by the board, the city attorney has drafted a resolution to make this change to our municipal election method from nonpartisan election to a runoff to a nonpartisan plurality method. Since North Carolina has a state statute that authorizes municipalities to amend their charters to change the election method from one of the 4 basic options, all of which are in the odd years, the board can proceed with the charter amendment by following the statute or by seeking a local bill from the General Assembly. The board is also has the option to call for a special election for the purpose of submitting the ordinance to a vote. Mr. Davis can explain that further if you need him to do so. Presuming that the board wants to amend the charter consistent with the statutory authority, the resolution has been prepared. It's in your packet tonight, indicating the board's intent to consider an ordinance that will amend this charter. The resolution calls for the public hearing to be held on May 14, 2019 if it's adopted. And following that hearing, the board can consider adopting an amendment ordinance at its May 28, 2019 meeting. So there's amendments included in your packet from Scott. and we're happy to answer any questions.
Board have questions, comments, etc.?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the resolution indicating intent to consider an ordinance amending the election method from nonpartisan with runoff to a nonpartisan plurality method, and calling for a public hearing on the proposed change. And I do want to add that for an election to be held in November of 2021, so there's no confusion.
Quick question, sorry. Plurality basically means if I
One
have.
vote wins.
Okay, sounds good.
Excuse me, I couldn't hardly hear you.
It's one vote wins. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
Mayor?
Yes.
I want to make a comment because I'm going to vote no against this. I just wanted to give one stat that the history of New Bern, there's been 8 runoff elections, and 8 times there's been the situation where the person that came in second in October won in November. So I think that's important for us when we talk about voter turnout. We talk about an elevator to provide our citizens access to be a part of our meeting. 8 times in the history of New Bern, the citizens had their voice heard in November because the winner in October was not who the majority wanted. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I feel the same way as Alderman Odom. I won in a runoff, and I feel that it gives a person the opportunity to have good leadership in what he's doing and believe in that. I don't think that this is where it's always been. I don't know what needs to be changed now. I don't know where this is coming from myself.
Can I ask a question? Does anybody have the stats or the numbers as to how many municipalities in the state are
Yes.
holding elections the way we are proposing?
So just for the record, and make sure that we all understand, there are 552 municipalities in the state of North Carolina. Currently, we are the only municipality that holds an October election with a November runoff. So right now, out of the 552, there are only 12 cities that are doing a nonpartisan election with a runoff. A few of them being Cary, Raleigh, Rocky Mount, large cities. You know, I do believe that we need to do staggered terms. I sincerely believe staggered terms would benefit this board instead of everybody being voted in, everybody being voted out. But it's difficult at best to get a consensus on that, other than we would draw it out of the hat, because what would happen is a half of this board would have to have a 2-year term, and then the other half of the board would run 2 years later. So every 2 years we would have an election, which can be costly. So this way, there's one election. We'll go to November when most people understand that there's an election. November is voting day. I think it'll make it easier. It'll make it cleaner. And I'm going to say this. I had 4 people in a race. And everybody said, oh, you have to have a runoff. You have to have a runoff. But I worked really hard. And I knocked on a lot of doors. And I talked to a lot of people. And I was able to win it, not by 1 vote, by 54% of the vote. Now, anybody could do it, but I have great concerns that this last time we had 3 unopposed seats, and I just feel that let's go to November, let's try it. This board can come back again, you know, and change it again, but I think this would, at this point, after talking to Melanie Ray, I've talked to people throughout the state, we will save money, and I think this would be a good option. And let's go through the process. Let our citizens talk. Let's move this forward to a public hearing. Let our citizens talk, and we can go from there.
How many of the cities in Craven County will have the election on this cycle?
It will be Cove City, Bridgeton. Currently, it's Trent Woods, River Bend, Cove City, Bridgeton, Havelock.
So all of them?
All of them.
My comment would be, if we truly care about saving the citizens money, I think not having that October election and going straight to November is good. I've always said I've been an advocate of voter education. I feel that having a November election will put the responsibility for us as elected officials and citizens to truly educate the citizens on why they should elect us or why they should vote a certain way for a certain candidate. And I feel like it puts pressure on us to really get out there and get to know our citizens and not just come around every 4 years to have a conversation for a vote, that if it's based on one vote that you knocked on that door, you educated them, and you have a great platform. And I feel like if we're saving citizens money, we're saving more by going to a November election. So I'm definitely going to vote yes.
Kenzie, did you have something?
If you're gonna save money, you can either do 3 years, or you could do 5 years. Either way, you're saving money.
Well, you guys were
I'm
opposed to a
gonna
fifth year.
tell you, let me tell you the reason I'm so strongly against the going to 2020, because we would have to hold our election in March, because that's what North Carolina is setting up in a presidential year. That means if we had the same election process as we did in 17, 3 seats were unopposed, okay, and the rest of the people won the race, no runoff, then we would have a lame duck board for almost 10 months from March to December. That means a board would prepare a budget for a new board. Can you imagine some of the perils we might walk into? That concerns me, that you would have a board sitting here preparing a budget for the board you know that's going to come in. And what might happen may or may not happen. I have concerns with that. I'd be willing to go to 2022 in a midterm election, but at this point, let's just go ahead and let's put it out there. Let's try it. Let's get it going. And if you go to midterms, then I suggest you really, then to get there, you do staggered terms and do half of the board the first time around and half of the board the second time around, and have elections every 2 years.
My last comment would be, and this is probably going to bite me, I worked very hard, even though I was unopposed, and knocked on doors and went into the community, and I earned my 4 years, and I've been very impactful, and I want to continue to be impactful for the 4 years that I'm here. So that is the reason why I would not go and vote down to 3 years, because I earned my spot, and I want my citizens that voted me in to get their full 4 years of what I'm bringing to the table.
And Alderman Kinsey, in talking to the General Assembly and some of the members, they would be very, very, very hard pressed to agree to us cutting our term short, because they believe that the voters of this city voted us in for 4 years. Now, they would agree if we wanted to, in 2021, when our term is up, make a 3-year term, make a 5-year term, make a 1-year term. They would be okay, but there is no precedent to show that they have cut terms short during their current term.
I mean, this is nothing that I brought up. This was brought to me, and I'm just making a suggestion.
I'm just giving you the
I mean,
information from
I
the
don't have a
research that I
problem.
did.
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem, being elected or not being elected. If people are gonna vote for who they want to vote for, if you're gonna save money, the presidential election would be the way to go. That's my opinion. This is just something that was brought before me as a board member, and I'm just exercising what I feel that I think that would be good for the city. I don't have no personal vendetta in this fight here. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, if the people chooses to elect you as an official, that's what they're going to do. But I'm not trying to change anything for myself personally or anything like that. I feel if you work hard, I had folks running at me, throwing everything at me except the garbage can. And I still was able to become successful and being a good servant to the people. And that's just how I feel. But at the end of the day, it all comes out in the wash. So that's just my opinion.
Mayor, I'd like to call the question if there's
Well,
no
Alderman Best
I'm
had,
sorry.
wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, I've been sitting here patiently waiting. But I just want to get an understanding of this, because if we go with the nonpartisan plurality vote, we will be saving money this year because we won't have a runoff. But I do want to go to a presidential election, which will be in 2021. I would like for us to be caught up in 2022 with the 2020 would put us in the presidential election, but I too do not want to lose a year from my current term that the citizens voted me in for. But I do think at some point in time that going with the November election without a runoff, we will be saving the taxpayers some money.
Plus, it's divided among the other cities.
Exactly. Now, again, with the majority voting method and the plurality voting method, I personally, I really, it doesn't matter to me, because if the citizens want you in, they're going to come out and they're going to vote for you.
Amen.
And this majority voting method just gives you a person a second chance to go out, have some time to build up some votes, to get some additional votes, and I just don't think that's fair. And for all you sports fans, you all know how the game is played.
Exactly.
If you win by 1 point, you're the winner. There's no going back having a second chance. But that's just my
No
take on it.
second chances.
I really, my main concern is going with a presidential election year in November and saving the taxpayers money, and you'll get more of a voters turnout.
I just wondered how much of the voters would pay attention to small town elections during the presidential.
Right, that would be my
Yeah, I
suggestion,
think
too.
the presidential race would
And
be
that's
fun
partisan.
attended, but trump everything else, and we would kind of be lost. Nobody's going to be interested in having debates with city aldermen during a presidential election. That would be my only concern, and that's probably the reason why it's not being done throughout the rest of the cities throughout the state.
But you get more voters turnout at a presidential election. We all know that. The numbers show that.
You call the
I'm
question.
going to second her motion.
Yeah, for a call for the question.
Yep, call the question.
All in favor of calling for the question, I guess say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Okay, this time we're going to have a roll call starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom,
No.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
No.
Mayor Outlaw,
No.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris,
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. At this time, let's go to item number 12, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Item number 12 is consideration of the board to adopt a budget ordinance amendment for FY 18-19 operating budget. This budget ordinance amendment recognizes $17,500 that was received from the Governor's Highway Safety Grant to purchase a police patrol vehicle. It also amends the FY19 budget to advance repayment of the installment purchase debt for the ERP Phase 1 project. There's a memo that's included from Mr. Sabatelli in your packet, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Does that mean we can reduce the number of patrol cars to 9?
Does anybody have any questions by this item? Number 12.
No. Make a motion that we adopt the budget ordinance amendments for the 2018-19 operating budget.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris,
Yes.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 13.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 13 is a discussion on water resources capital item. The FY 18-19 budget includes $60,000 in water resources to convert the ammonia system at the water plant from a gas to a liquid system. This figure included $20,000 for materials and $40,000 for installation and transition. Staff has determined that they can complete this conversion without utilizing outside assistance and will save the $40,000 that was set aside for the installation and transition. It's requested by staff that the board authorize us to implement a budget revision to allow for that $40,000 to be spent on the installation of some much-needed generator at the industrial park tank. The cost of installing the generator is estimated at $53,000, and the additional $13,000 in funds needed for the generator can be taken from the amount budgeted for the installation of a generator at the Cove City standpipe. There's a memo that's included that summarizes all of this from Mr. Hughes in your packet, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
So what's the real need for that generator? Just for backup in case power's out? I mean, obviously that's what normally a generator is, but anything specific to this piece of equipment?
Yeah, obviously the two generators that are needed, one is at the tank, which provides a supply system for much of our water system that's in that area. Dalton's here if he needs to ask any more detailed questions. And then obviously the Cove City standpipe, whenever we installed that generator, there was some savings from the funds for that. So that's the reason why they're trying to utilize those funds to the best of their ability.
Is this like a permanent generator? It can't be like if you had an emergency somewhere else, it can't be transferred around or whatever?
Let me have Dalton come up.
Good evening. The industrial park is sort of a unique pressure zone in that we have one tank and we have one booster pump station right there. I don't really have any redundant pumps or tanks in the area that would catch, the loss of power at that site like we do in the heart of town, where we have 3 tanks and we have a booster station that has a automatic standby generator. So as the industrial park has grown, they've in the last 5 to 7 years, they've added some larger facilities, increased fire flow potential. So there is the potential that we could have an ill-timed power outage at the same time that have a large draw for maybe a fire event, and it will be very difficult to get there in time with a portable generator and hook it up and get it online in time before we would potentially lose that tank. So this would allow us the ability to instantly get our power back up and hopefully not have that event occur.
So this generator would be used to power the pump that would pump the water into the tank, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And currently have no generator there doing that at all? So you could easily lose pressure, right?
Yes, we do. We do have a transfer switch there, like we do at pretty much all of our lift stations and other facilities, where we can get a portable generator on site and power it that way. But it takes that takes time, and it just depends on the nature of the event as to how soon we could get a piece of equipment there. And then during Florence and storms where we had massive power outages, a lot of those generators were being allocated for the lift stations to keep the collection system moving. Had we needed one, we could have used it. Fortunately, we didn't have a power issue at that site, but the potential is certainly there.
The other, it's not only to you as the water level decreases in the tank, obviously you lose pressure because elevation means pressure. And then secondly, if the pump's not pumping, it's not refilling the tank, which means if you did have a fire event, obviously you're going to quickly run out of some water if you're having a major structure fire type situation out at the industrial park.
Well, so anyway, I don't know. Looks like a budget amendment where you save some money and you need to turn around and spend it somewhere else. Is about what that is, right?
Yeah. If I could add to that, we had budgeted for several generators in the coming for the FY20 for some more sites that would benefit from the redundancy, specifically ones that feed the new water plant. Just issues that we ran into during Hurricane Florence. So we would likely have budgeted. This would have been a generator that would be in that budget package for next year. But since we kind of got got our heads wrapped around the LAS project and been able to do the work on our own, it just seemed to be a good opportunity to use those funds towards that generator, and that would kind of get us a step ahead in the
reason I was asking some of this. What size is that generator going to be? Like 100K or what?
It'll be a 60 kW.
60K.
Yes, sir.
The reason I was asking is that if it could be portable, but quasi-permanent but portable, in the event of a hurricane where we incorporated this new design for future pumping, which was electric, over in the Duffy Field area where we're going to probably be looking at some additional pumping. In the event of a hurricane and you happen to have power on that end of town, but you didn't have power in the Duffy Field area, if it was portable, we might be able to flip that over, because part of our problem during the hurricane was that some of our pumps were electric, and so we weren't able to pump down. So I was just wondering, Mr. Stevens, if you had, I just want to make sure we're purchasing something that
we've had issues in the past with portable generators because of the amount of fuel that they're capable of carrying.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got a generator that's sitting on an important asset, will it be diesel or will it be gas or what?
It'll be a diesel.
Yeah. Will it have an external tank? Do you know, or an internal tank?
It's part of the package, so I'm assuming it'll be one of those where it's a pad mount generator.
Yeah, with
you have
the
the
tank underneath
and the
of
unit on top, so it'll all be on a single pad.
Yeah.
There will not be a separate tank to the side.
Yeah, but in the past, I know we had this problem at the National Avenue Fire Station, where the fuel capacity was so small that it was more of a burden trying to keep a diesel truck on site out there, keep constantly, putting fuel in it. I mean, I understand what you're saying with something on wheels you could roll around, but or something, an important piece of, something like this water tank, there's fire safety involved. I mean, you need plenty of fuel capacity, and you just don't have that with the portable generators.
Yeah, and that during Hurricane Florence, that when we had that extended period of harsh conditions, that's what we really ran into. Is it wasn't whether we couldn't get the equipment to the site, it's that being able to leave the facility during those conditions and get there in time to get the power back on, because that's the one thing that's unique about the water system itself, is that if you lose power, you can get the power back on. If the collection system goes down, you have issues, but you can get it back on. Once you lose that water system from a water quality standpoint, once you lose that water system pressure, the game's over. It triggers your boil water notices and other measures between us and the EPA to reprove our water system pressure. So there's a lot riding on that initial response to make sure that we never lose the pressure in that tank. So this would be a big contributor to that.
Okay. I'm gonna go with the fire chief's opinion on that.
So I'm not so sure how to make this motion. There's a lot of moving targets here.
I'll just approve the.
You want me to try, Bob?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we provide staff the consent to purchase a generator of capital funds for the generator at the water department, the industrial park.
Second.
Now, in that motion, you're not rescinding the original budget amendment or the budget item.
That's right.
Sir, all you're doing is providing authorization for us to proceed. The budget amendment is actually an internal amendment that you're just providing authorization for the manager not to make.
It doesn't need board approval
No, sir.
internally. Is that one of those things that would just make the fund balance higher that you didn't do it that year?
No, sir.
Generally speaking, Mayor, and I'll answer that. Generally speaking, anytime we have capital items that were approved in the budget, if there's a modification or an addition to, we like to have that discussion with the board, because those are individual items that were approved for capital. This would be an additional item that will be purchased, utilize savings from previous capital items that have been purchased, is essentially what's happening. So there wouldn't be a budget amendment needed. It's just direction to utilize leftover funds.
I'm gonna be honest with you.
Madam Clerk, where are we?
Do we need a motion?
We have a motion by
Motion and a
Odom.
second. It's time for a
And who
vote.
made the second?
Alderman Harris.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
No.
Let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle?
Yes?
Alderwoman Harris?
Yes.
Alderman Astor?
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw?
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey?
Yes.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Odom?
Yes.
Okay, appointments?
I have none.
Yes, I have an appointment for, well, first, if there's anybody that would like to be on the Planning and Zoning Board, please send your resumes and let me know so I can appoint you. Because Carol Williams, her term has expired, and it's my responsibility to find an individual to replace her. But I also do need to appoint Mike Markhams seat for the Friends of the Firemen Museum. It will expire on April 22nd, 2019, and he has expressed that he would like to be reappointed, so I would like to do that tonight.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
That's all I have.
Alderman Astor.
Nothing, none.
Alderman Kinsey.
No, sir.
Alderman Best.
Nothing.
And Alderman Odom.
No, sir.
Attorney's report.
Just one clarification, Mayor, members of the board. I presume from your discussion of the Duffest event that you were okay with that being moved from May to June. If so, on your next agenda, we'll have to amend our ordinance. The ordinance provides that it will be in May.
It was a one-time.
Yes, ma'am. And we'll change it back afterward, but
Okay.
the code is the law, and we might as well.
Gotcha.
The only way to amend the law is to amend the ordinance.
Thank you.
Okay. City manager's report.
Just real quick, Mayor, I wanted to kind of give a quick update on a very large project that we have with the city here, and that's our update on Munis and the implementation of our ERP. So basically, our financials, those went live on the 4th of March. We did have some hiccups transitioning, but as expected, we did not have any major issues with regards to our transition. We are still running concurrently our old banner system as well as the Munis system so that we have a redundant backup. But that we had training sessions for staff who work with the program, and those will continue for month-end, year-end, and bank reconciliation and reporting. So those have all been transitioning well. One of the next phases is to be incorporated into the ERP is the human resources function of it. That's the initial fundamental training sessions that are slated to begin in late March of next year, I think. Is that correct, JR? And the future state sessions will begin on the May 21st. This will give Munis basically the basis to set up the HR system so that all of those functions will be now underneath our ERP program. The next function after the human resources will be permits and codes, which will also include fire. Questionnaires are due to Munis by the 12th of April. Fundamental reviews and analysis begins on the 16th of April, and the sessions April 16th through 18th sessions will include Tyler cashiering. So we have that set up for next year as well. And then the CIS system, we're very early on in the process, but continue to follow up with Munis project manager on the interfaces and the schedule of that. All sessions of those are moving along very smoothly, and the staff has been getting items completed on time. So we're I think overall doing a great job in the transition from our old banner system to a very efficient and easier to use system. Obviously, anytime you have a major financial software like this, you're going to run into some hiccups here and there. We're working through those, and Munis has been very amenable to working with us on those particular things. So I'd say we would be very pleased with where we are. I definitely enjoy not getting so many paper copies. Alderman Astor, you probably know and remember, and Alderman Best, and the internal approval process of getting paper after paper after paper approvals, it surely is saving a ton of time. So I think it's a very good implementation that's going on so far. That's the only thing I have, just kind of quick update.
Okay. New business, starting with Alderman Odom.
Nothing tonight, sir.
Alderman Best.
Yes, I'd just like to thank Ms. Sherwood Crawford. She's with United Way of Coastal Carolina. Her and the employees, some of the employees of Mullen, they was instrumental in coming to the Pleasant Hill Park, and they did an installation on April the 12th of a newborn learning trail, and I think they did installations of 3 other parks within the city as well. The park they've really enhanced the park a lot. Foster, I know you've gone out and seen what the work that they've done. So I just wanted to thank them. Also, I had one other thing. What was it? Oh, the Duffy Field spring cleanup. It's going to start May 2nd through the 4th. So if any of you would like to come out and help us clean up Duffy Field, it would be greatly appreciated. If you want to coordinate, get with Miss Ann Trout of the Duffy Field Phoenix Project. That's all I have.
Did you want to, you're going to get mad about anywhere you need some dumpsters?
The Duffest and Phoenix project is handling that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're already on that.
Good, great, good. Alderman Kinsey.
Yes, I have an appointment that I want to rescind the appointment for Ann Schaub, appointed to the Planning and Zoning Board. So I'd like to remove that.
So somebody have to second that?
Second.
Motion and second, is there any discussion?
Is there any reason why she wanted to rescind herself?
Technical reasons.
Gotcha.
All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same.
Do you have someone to replace her, Alderman Kinsey, or will you need a replacement?
I just know it's technical reasons right now. And,
So the seat is empty. That's what I'm trying to understand. So her seat will be empty on the board. Is that correct?
No, there's
No.
still someone in that seat at the moment.
Oh, okay. He appointed her when there wasn't an available seat. Understood. Okay.
Okay, Alderman Astor.
Nothing other than want to thank Matt and his staff for the wonderful meeting that we had last night with the residents of Carolina Colors and to Burnham, Hardy Farms, Bryce's Crossings, Evans Mill, to discuss the Old Airport Road construction. It was well attended, and Matt and his staff did a wonderful job answering everyone's questions. And if anyone has any questions that did not get the opportunity to come to the meeting, they certainly can shoot an email to me, and we will try to provide them with some information.
Okay, anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Alderman Harris.
Thank you. As you know, the last meeting, we had a heavy discussion with Craven Terrace. Me and the mayor spoke to Michelle with Preservation Management and gave her a timeline to get back to us. Have not heard anything. I'm sure the mayor hasn't heard anything. I know we got with the city manager about having inspectors to come out, so I wanted to know if you had an update on that in that regard.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, our staff is scheduled to meet out there tomorrow at 2 p.m. Yep.
And then, so we would have an update. Can you call me or email me on what was found so that we decide whether we need to have a special call
I think the
meeting, or do you
intent
wanna
was,
just do it?
yeah, I think the intent was with Mr. Ruggieri to have his staff to produce a report
Okay.
of their findings, and
And
then
email
would
it?
provide it to the board. Since it kind of came to the board as a full board thing, we'd
Okay.
probably get it in a report form and provide that back to y'all.
Okay. At the next meeting or in the email?
I can probably do it through email if you prefer
Do you
that.
think that's best, or should we have it first?
That way you'll have it faster.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Anything else?
And that is, thank you to Development Services and Ms. Margaret Shields. With a deadline, we were able to submit this grant for the chess park, so we're just waiting to hear back if we get this money so we can do our chess park. So thank you for your hard work, I appreciate that. That's all.
Oh, okay. Alderman Bingham.
I have a couple of things as always. First, I need to ask the board to re-vote on something. The Hydra came before us at the last meeting. We had a request to close the street on Saturday, April 27th, for a neighborhood gathering Hydra was having, and they made an error. It wasn't Saturday 27th, it was Sunday the 28th, and they put the wrong date on the application. So I guess, City Attorney, we can just, I just make a motion in a voice, okay?
Yes,
So I
ma'am.
just want to make a motion that the street be closed for, it's Change Street, for the Rocking on Change Spring Social for Sunday, April 28th.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Okay, next thing is, we talked about the noise ordinance. I have been out, I know in my district, I've met with the bar owners, I've met with residents twice, had 2 public meetings with residents, I'm gathering information, still working on that. But I want to remind my fellow board members that this is going to be a citywide ordinance. If you want to participate in any way or get some feedback, I'm hoping probably in another week to have some information to get back to our city attorney so we can start mocking up the ordinance, but I surely would like some participation from the rest of the group. It's not really only a downtown issue, it'll be an issue, once this ordinance is done, it will impact anywhere in the city of New Bern. So if you have any input or whatever, let me know, or you want to have a citizens meeting, I'm happy to. I've gotten all kinds of information people have given me, so I feel like I'm going to be well-versed in noise.
My only comment would be is if we're going to go to a decibel system, I would love to be able to duplicate what the levels are.
Yes, so Sonia has someone in her department, and they actually own a dB meter in the HR department. So I'm trying to make arrangements to go out and walk around with it, and I'll get with you if you'd like to.
Yes,
We
please.
can kind of hear it and maybe listen to it and try to figure out, because what would happen is whatever the city then gets, that will be the measurement. It'll be what their volume is, not what somebody else's dB needs. It'll be one standard. So we do need to hear that, because I don't know what a 60 sounds like or an 80. Have no clue what the difference in that
Yeah, I
is.
would like to be a part of that.
Okay,
before
great.
I vote.
I would love the help. And then the last thing, I just want to, everybody's seen the Pepsi banners downtown, seen everybody scrubbing and cleaning, and for all the people that sent me nasty grams about my awnings at the Pepsi store, I want to apologize, but try to get somebody to wash an awning and do things in this climate we're at with Hurricane Florence. People are busy. Could not find anybody in New Bern to work on it, so I had to go to Greenville, but I got somebody, so they cleaned the awnings and they look great. And I've actually got a painter from Greenville that is there now painting the front of the store, so it looks good, because we will welcome the PepsiCo Board of Directors and the stockholders on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. The annual stockholders meeting will be Wednesday. There is a new CEO. Indra has retired, and a new CEO will be coming to New Bern and leading his group of board of directors. And these are some of the most prominent people from all over our country, so we're very honored to have him in our city. And he has decided to support us in a big way by coming back this year, even though we don't have a hotel or a convention center to support them. They are back here for their meetings. So if you see somebody out there, smile and welcome them to New Bern. But that's why everybody's sprucing up. We want our town to look as best as we can, because we want them to continue to come back and impact New Bern. And they will be making a wonderful announcement at the board meeting about some impact they're going to have in our community. So I'm really excited about that. So thank you, Bill.
Yes, ma'am.
Say anything about railroad?
Do you want to say something?
No.
You can say something. I don't know. We got issues with them.
I want to go back to Alderman Harris when you said about the Craven Terrace. You asked for, after the findings, you asked the city manager to send a report. Now, is that going to be something you're going to email all board members or just Alderman Harris?
No, I was planning on emailing it to everyone. Since it was brought to the board as a board issue, I was going to email all the board.
Okay.
Would we be able to put on the next meeting item for discussion so that we can, because it happened in the public eye and we're taking responsibility, so that we can discuss the findings in the public eye, what we found and where we're going to go from there?
I don't see a reason why we can have an item on the agenda.
Okay. Do I say it now so I can get my second?
Just a question for the attorney. Is that privileged information, an inspection inside of somebody's private property? I mean, if somebody complained about a tenant, if a tenant complained about a landlord and we went out and did an inspection in their house and we come back and publicly make that information public?
It's a public record,
Okay.
but I don't know how deep you want to get in the weeds on the issue.
Okay.
Well, what is the board, because if we're a team, one band, one sound, do you think that we need to have open discussion, or, because we can't sit here and email each other, that creates a meeting, but we obviously, I know me and the mayor, Sabrina, Barbara, we're all, Bobby, everybody is serious that we want to figure out what can be done with Craven Terrace, so.
Well, now, from the beginning, my understanding was that you, Alderman Kinsey, and myself were going to be a part of that meeting. So what happened with that? You decided to go with the mayor instead?
Well, the mayor called me
Okay.
with Michelle on the phone, and we were trying to give them the benefit of the doubt of having their own inspectors come down and rectify some of the situations. We haven't heard from them, so the next step that we decided was, so we have something to discuss, we go ahead and do our own inspection, so we have some foundation on, go from there. So maybe after we, go ahead, Mr.
I think it's the intent for the Craven Terrace folks to have some inspectors go along with ours tomorrow.
Okay.
Last I heard. Now, if it's changed, I'm not aware of it. But their intent was for both their group and our inspectors to go jointly.
Well, that would have been good to know from them that they called us back. We asked for a
Yeah.
return phone call, but that's not on you. But after we get the information, if the three of us want to meet to discuss it, that'd be fine, on what we feel we should do. Alderman Kinsey, do you still want to do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so then we'll do that. You don't have to make it an item. We'll just go ahead and set up a meeting to discuss what we find out.
Any other new business at this time? Seeing none, let's go to number 18, closed session. Do we need a closed session tonight?
Yes, Mayor. On two matters, we need to discuss a personnel matter pursuant to 143-1311A6, and then need to discuss the potential acquisition of real property pursuant to 143-1311A5 and A3.
So moved.
Motion and second to go into closed session. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Motion carries.
Are we going to